As we get started, I'm going to apologize in advance for the noise coming from my office. We have some work happening in here today. So if you hear some banging, I promise it's not me, it's the work that's happening in the office adjacent. So I'd like to start by welcoming everyone to our information session today. And the goal of this session is really to provide information and some clarity about SGS902 as a course and what it is, as well as to provide some opportunities at the end for you to ask questions as you consider whether this course is a good fit for you and your professional development goals. My name is Carolyn McRae. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm one of the course instructors for SGS 902 this winter 2024. I'm an educational developer in the Center for Teaching and Learning, and my background is in teaching primarily in the sciences. My role at the CTL is to support grad students, postdocs, teaching fellows in their professional development as educators. So this is a course that I really enjoy being a part of. And I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Yunyi Chen, to introduce herself.
Thank you, Carolyn. Hello, everyone. My name is Yunyi Chen. I'm also an educational developer at the Center for Teaching and Learning, working with Carolyn and many other wonderful colleagues here to support all teaching fellows here at the Queen's University. My pronouns are also she, her. My portfolio is built around the principles, global engagement, strategic plan, and my mandate, very briefly, is to support all educators at Queen's in enacting global engagement in teaching and learning, including curriculum development and redevelopment for global learning and educational equity. I'll be joining Carolyn to teach SGS902, as she mentioned, in winter 2024.
So we are going to let you know that we're going to record the presentation portion of our information session today so that folks who aren't able to join us during this time slot are able to get the same information. And so what we do is we ask that we hold your questions until the end, and we're going to open it up after we stop the recording for lots of time for questions and answers. And if you have a question that you're worried you might forget during the session, you can feel free to pop it into the chat, and we'll make sure that we look through the chat and answer questions as soon as we can after the kind of formal part of the presentation is done today. So I'd like to open our session today with a land acknowledgement. And maybe this is an opportunity for you also to take a moment to reflect on where you are if you're joining us from somewhere outside of the kind of Kingston region or the Queen's campus this morning. I will acknowledge that I'm sitting in my office currently at Queen's on main campus, and that this campus occupies the traditional and unceded territory of the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee people. I'm a settler on this land that I now work and call my home for about the last 10 years. And as an institution of higher education that's founded in a Western educational system, I'm navigating my own learning and unlearning journey to understand my roles and responsibility, not only to the land and towards reconciliation, but what it means to bridge these elements of indigenization and decolonization into all of the work that I do, and most importantly, into the teaching that I do. So in the context of this course, it's been an area that I've been thinking about over the last couple of years. And I'm going to pass it over to Yunyi.
I am a first-generation immigrant to Canada who speaks English as an additional language. I'm also an unsettled settler of color on this Indigenous territory, who comes from a cultural background where holism is valued and respected. Therefore, I have a particular appreciation for Indigenous knowledges and pedagogies, such as the medicine wheel and the four directions teachings. Both guide me to participate and practice my work on a daily basis in a holistic manner by incorporating the mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional ways of being, thinking, and doing. I am committed to integrating Indigenous knowledges and pedagogies ethically and respectfully in my work to decolonize my practice of teaching and educational development. So this is the agenda for today's info session. In our time together, we will be talking about what is SGS902 all about, the structure for winter 2024, the major assignments, schedule and workload of the course, and also how to register. So as Carolyn quickly mentioned, Our goal is to finish the presentation within maybe 20 to 30 minutes. So we have a lot of time for the rest of the session to answer your questions and have a discussion. So first and foremost, what is SGS902 all about? So basically speaking, this course is intended for graduate students and postdoctoral fellows across the disciplines who want to develop a skilled, thoughtful, and confident post-secondary teachers. The goal of this course is to challenge and broaden conceptions of teaching and approaches to learning in higher education. So next is about what to expect from this course. So the weekly sessions will be literature informed, but activities and discussion based with an expectation of a high degree of collaboration and participation. The course has been organized in such a way as to balance theory and practice and to support both conceptual and skill development. So the course learning outcomes that we will work together to achieve include relate formal and theoretical knowledge of teaching and learning to the post-secondary teaching and learning context, adopt and adapt a learning-centered approach to teaching a variety of post-secondary learners, engage with and adapt active learning techniques that focus on collaboration, select and implement a variety of instructional and assessment practices that are aligned with intentions for student learning. Last but not least, assess, summarize, and adopt scholarly literature on teaching and learning related to your own discipline to establish your own scholarly approach to teaching.
All right, so what kind of topics can you expect to take on in 902? So in this course, we are looking at teaching and learning quite broadly, and I think the goal is to cover as many topics in teaching and learning as we can over the 13 weeks together. And so some of the topics include kind of starting off from principles of teaching and learning and looking at some of the historical, but also some of the newer frameworks that you might think of when you think of teaching, what it means to be a scholarly teacher. And then to jump into things that are really practical in nature, like course design and constructive alignment, which includes learning outcomes, assessment. We'll talk about active learning and educational technology, and then online and blended learning. But something that's important to know is we will have specific weeks on elements of IEDIAA. So that's indigenization, equity, diversity, inclusion, anti-racism, and accessibility. So there are weeks where we'll focus specifically on some of those topics, including anti-racism and indigenization. However, a lot of our discussions in 902 across all of the weeks will embed an equity-focused lens into our teaching and learning conversations. So for example, in weeks where we talk about assessment, we'll really focus on, what does it mean to create accessible and inclusive assessments? What does it mean to really focus on designing assessments for students that allow them to authentically express their knowledge and what they're learning. So we're really going to focus on using that IEDIAA lens through all of our conversations in 902 across the entire term. All right, so what does SGS 902 look like in terms of a model for course delivery? So this is an on-campus, in-person course. Through OnQ, there are kind of some preparatory activities every week where we guide you through like a reading, a video, maybe a podcast, to engage in some of the foundational concepts. So this we expect to take folks maybe like an hour to an hour and a half of kind of like that initial, prep for coming to class. During our class time, we meet for 3 hours synchronously every week. And this is our chance to do a lot more kind of discussion-based activities, to work with your peers, and to connect. So we meet Tuesday mornings, this iteration starting in January. And then thirdly, lastly is your application part. So this varies week to week. The course does have some assignments, which we'll go through, Uni will go through in a couple of slides. And then there are some practical pieces like a teaching component, and then observing your peers teaching. And so that's the work that happens outside of class. And that really will vary in the amount of time dedicated to it based on kind of your own schedule and when you work on the different assignments and activities that happen in class. All right, and so this is kind of an overview of our course topics and what you can expect as you navigate through SGS 902 over the entire semester. So this course runs for the entire winter semester from January to April. And we start broadly talking about principles of teaching and learning. We move into philosophies of teaching, anti-racism and inclusive pedagogies. And then starting kind of late January is when we focus on our course design, learning outcomes, constructive alignment, assessment, syllabus creation, and Indigenous ways of knowing. The second half of the course is when we get into a lot of the practical components. So coming back after reading week, there'll be conversations around lesson planning, active learning, use of educational technology, online learning, micro teaching, which is an activity where you will have a short teaching experience within the course. And then we're going to end the course by talking about some of the impacts of what's happening in the educational field today. So that includes a conversation around generative AI and large language models and how that impacts our teaching choices. And then finally, a conversation around university of the future and what do we think the university will look like moving forward.
So here are the major assignments required by this course. So teaching philosophy statements that we can use to either start putting together or advancing our teaching dossier if we want to teach in higher education in the future. Annotated assessment. So this helps us plan and envision our own course planning and how to develop a course syllabus. Teaching practicum is an opportunity where we can apply or use what we've learned in the course in practice by teaching 1 hour of a course or session in your discipline. So this assignment will have a bit more information for you on the next slide or so. The micro teaching, as Carolyn mentioned, offers you a time and space to try some new and exciting and creative ideas for teaching. And lastly, the reflective activities that will help us reflect on what we have learned or experienced in the course to help us either enable or enhance our learning through this course. And also, Carolyn and I developed a timeline to show you how this assignment threads throughout the whole semester to avoid the impression that this course is assignment heavy. It is not. You have a lot of time to prepare for those assignments, and we have different drafts for the teaching philosophy statements. We provide you time to get ready for your practical activities, including micro teaching and teaching practicum, and also the 3 reflective journals are spread throughout the whole semester as well. So 2 of the topics will be based on a practical activity, and 1 will be your own choice, like whichever topic you want to use to reflect on your learning in this course. So this is a brief timeline of all the assignments, and this is about the teaching practicum. And this is the assignment where we usually get the most questions, but I would appreciate your patience. Please hold your questions until we finish this presentation. We have lots of time to answer your questions. Like Carolyn mentioned, if you worry about forgetting about your questions, please feel free to put them in the chat so you have it there. So basically speaking, this assignment requires you to coordinate a 1 hour teaching experience in your discipline on your own. So you have about a month to figure this out once you enrolled in this course. And you are always welcome to speak to Carolyn and I for questions or concerns. So within this teaching practicum, you will play 2 different roles. The first role is a teaching role, which requires you to draft a lesson plan for your teaching, and then you have to teach the class or the session. And in addition, you will play a second role as an observer, so within which you will observe 2 peers teaching their classes or sessions, just like you will have 2 peers come to your teaching to observe you. And after your observations, you read about the experience through reflective journals.
All right, so we mentioned at the start of the presentation, SGS 902, this is a credit course for graduate students, for postdocs that want to join the course. There is no credit associated with it, but the way that it works is this is a pass-fail graded course. And so what constitutes a pass in SGS 902? And so these are kind of the main components we wanted to express. A pass in SGS 902 is granted to those that demonstrate regular attendance of synchronous sessions. And now we know that life as a graduate student or postdoctoral fellow includes things that come up unexpectedly, illness, conferences. And so regular attendance means communicating in advance with Uni and I, should you have the things that come up that prevent your attendance, but we expect attendance as much as possible in the course, and a failure to attend more than 2 sessions without communicating in a reasonable way with Uni and I would not constitute a pass. So we expect, 11 out of the 13 sessions that you would be in attendance. And then the second thing is completion of all course assignments. So those 5 assignments that Uni introduced, we have just a completion mark for all of them. So it's submission of all of those course assignments. And we have one of them, I think it's one this year, will have a rubric. And anything that's marked with a rubric, a pass is set anything over 70%. And then regular engagement in in-class activities. So really this looks a little scary. We have 5 assignments and we want you to finish all of them, but really it's just about engaging with us in class, engaging with your peers in discussion, and working through the assignments that we have. All right, so this seems like a lot so far. We've talked a lot about kind of some of the things happening in 902, but I think it's important to touch on what we expect of students, but also what you can expect from Uni and I as course instructors. So what we expect of students, I think we've already touched upon a lot of these, is just regular participation and engagement. This is a great opportunity for your own professional development, and getting together with peers from across different disciplines can have really fruitful conversations. And I think that this is a great learning opportunity to not only learn from folks who teach in similar ways to you, but also to hear ideas of other folks and what they're doing on campus. So collaborating with course peers, approaching course activities fully prepared to engage in the tasks at hand, and then be willing to voice your input, concerns, ideas, and needs to the course instructors, in recognition of their autonomy over learning within the course. So we know that everyone learns differently, and we're happy to engage in conversations with things in the course that are working really well and things that we can do to better support your learning. So what can you expect from us as course instructors? Our goals are to facilitate a course that prioritizes your learning, your well-being, and your success on our learning outcomes. So we're open to those conversations to try and get you where you want to be at the end of this course. One of our main goals is communicating regularly, clearly, and respectfully with all of you. And I think that's something we expect in return, is open and transparent communication. And then lastly, you can expect us to remain open to feedback and receptive to it. This course is all about teaching and learning. And so I think it's really important for us as instructors to have those conversations with you throughout the course, and to be open to your feedback about how the course is going. All right, and so the last piece of information that's important for everyone is, after the info session today, if you are keen to register for SGS 902, there are 2 different kind of mechanisms to do so, and they depend on if you're a graduate student or if you're a postdoctoral fellow. So graduate students are required to submit an academic change form. It's available through our website. We link to the SGSPA's academic change form. You just need a couple signatures, one from either Uni or I, and then one from your supervisor in your department. So that's a process. Please start before kind of January if you want a spot in the course. And then postdoctoral fellows, you don't need the form. You just need to send us all of the information below. So your first name, last name, department, and your QueensNet ID, and we'll get you on the enrollment list for the course. Once you're enrolled, it's closer to January, that's when you have access to all of the materials through OnQ, and through communication with Uni and I. All right, so now's the time that we stop our kind of formal presentation. Our hope is to give you lots of time to ask questions, for clarification around any aspect of the course. And